Welcome to the Empowerment Hour, a podcast dedicated to the woman ready to take charge of her life, live in her purpose, and be unapologetically authentic. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin, award-winning author, mommypreneur, and the self-proclaimed Latina Oprah who is dedicated to helping women unleash their power, discover their purpose, and live up to their fullest potential. My goal is to empower you, inspire you, and help you unlock your passions and discover your purpose so that you live the most fulfilled and impassioned life. If you're ready to make a change and start living on purpose, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowerment Hour podcast. You know who it is. It's your girl, Nancy Ruffin, aka the Latina Oprah, aka the Purpose Professional, and the woman who is committed and dedicated to helping you discover your purpose and make sure that you are living your life intentionally and purposefully. Because the reality is, guys, we only have one life to live. And although life throws us many curveballs, we have to learn how to bob and weave and move with the punches and not let those obstacles and struggles and things that we can't control deter us from what we know we are supposed to be doing. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining me for another episode. I'm excited to be here with you guys. As always, it's been a really eventful week. There's been a ton of stuff happening, both in my personal life and just things that are happening across the country and in the news. And, you know, I kind of want to talk about it, and I want to get into the Florida school shooting that happened. I want to say it was on Valentine's Day. I believe it was on the 14th. In any case, it happened this week. And I want to take a moment just to acknowledge that. Maybe take a moment of silence for the victims and for the families, you know, and how they have to rebuild their lives. You know, I'm a mom, and I cannot even imagine sending my daughter off to school in the morning and her not returning to me. The thought of that, I'm at a loss for words, frankly, because the thought of it is really too much to bear. Schools, churches, hospitals, you know, these places traditionally are considered safe havens, right? Safe places. We don't expect these acts of violence and terror to happen in these types of buildings, and yet recent history has shown us that not even these places are safe. And so what do? Not only as parents, but as citizens and as human beings, and how do we work towards preventing these mass shootings from happening? There's been so much debate and discussion and back and forth. You know, the gun lobbyists and you know, the people who support these gun laws and advocate for guns don't believe that it's an actual gun issue. You know, there are others who argue and say that it's a mental health issue. And I think that the reality is it's really a combination of these things, right? Clearly, a healthy person isn't just going to decide one day to wake up and go shoot up a school full of children, or, you know, young teens or whatever, just or shoot up any place full of people. No one in their right mind is contemplating to do these things, right? So clearly there is some mental problem going on with this individual. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that we do have an issue with the fact that anyone can walk into a gun store and purchase a gun as easily as you can walk into any candy store really and buy candy. And I mean, maybe the analogy is not that simple, but the reality is that we don't place the same, I guess, strictness, for lack of a better term, on buying guns as we do to other things that we purchase. I mean, prime example, you have to be, what is it? 20, well, you have to be 21 years old to purchase alcohol and cigarettes in the United States, right? You can't walk into any store and purchase these items without ID. 21 years old, right? You have to be 21 to drink and smoke legally. Yet, the legal age to purchase a firearm in this country is 18 years old. What does that say about us as a country? That we're placing weapons in the hands of young people who may not be mature enough to handle operating a gun, let alone the consequences that come with that. But yet, we place more value on purchasing alcohol and tobacco. That is insane to me, especially as a mom of two young girls. You know, it angers me and it infuriates me that there are 17 families currently having to plan funerals to bury their children and to figure out how they are going to continue living their lives. Because I will tell you, as a mom, as a parent, my children are my life. And God forbid, if anything were to ever happen to either one of my kids, I would not know how to continue living. My life would be meaningless. There would be no purpose in me waking up in the morning. None. You know, and I know that if you're a parent, this fear of something happening to our children is something that we live with every single day. From the moment you learn that you're going to be a parent, you are filled with fear. It starts from the moment they're in your belly, in your womb, because you're concerned about possibly miscarrying, about possibly the child being born with some type of defect or disability or anything. And then once they're born, it's like a whole new different set of fears set in, right? And then the older they get, the fears start to change, right? Because now they're becoming more independent. And so you can't protect them as much as you would like, right? So then they start driving, and now you're worried about them driving and possibly getting into a car accident or drunk driving or someone hitting them. Or, I mean, there's just so many things that as parents you think about with regards to your children. And it's just, you're like living in a constant state of fear, and you just learn to live with that fear. You don't let it paralyze you, but it's always there. It's always in the back of your mind. And as a parent, all we ever want to do is protect our children. So to think that our kids can possibly go to school one day in a place where they're supposed to be safe and not return, how? I can't even wrap my head around that. It's just absolutely insane to me. And I just want to take a second, to to acknowledge the lives that were lost, and may those souls find peace, and may their parents somehow find the strength to move forward and to continue living and to remember their children, because it's something I would never wish on anyone, not even my worst enemy. Shifting gears a little bit, this week, if you're in New York, you know that it was New York Fashion Week. And so there were tons of shows and tons of parties going on. And, I'm not really a fashionista per se. Like, I'm not into all of the new fashion trends, or I don't keep up to date with what's hot. When I shop, I just shop based on what I like. But if it's hot or not, it doesn't matter to me. However, I did attend a fashion show this week for New York Fashion Week, because one of my great friends was walking in the show, and she walked for the Leanna Aguilar show, and she was amazing. And if you guys follow me, then you know that Martha Luna, who is a Latina influencer, she's a lifestyle blogger. She works with a lot of these really big, brands and designers. And so she walked in the show. And so me and a couple of our other friends attended to support her. And I have to say that the designs were simply stunning. If you're not familiar with this designer, Google her, look her up. But I mean, beautiful, beautiful, sexy, elegant pieces. Her name is Leanna Aguilar. She spells her first name Layana. And I attended the show, one, to support my friend Martha, but two, because I also wanted to take my nephew, who is 10 years old, and he is an aspiring fashion designer. And he always leaves me in awe with his passion and determination, and how certain he is about what he wants to do with his life. And he's already sketching, he's, creating different types of fabrics and designs and outfits. And he's just really, really amazing. And he's known that he's 10, but he's known that he's wanted to do this for at least a couple of years. And so, that's so impressive to me, because at his age, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. But the fact that he does, and that he's so determined, means a lot, to me. And it's important to me that myself and the rest of our family cultivate that for him and help him nurture his talent. And the way that you do that is by, one, taking them seriously and showing them that it is possible for them, right? And so for me, this show was the perfect way to expose him to what he loves. It was the first time he'd ever been to a fashion show. I love the fact that we attended, and it was a designer of Latina descent. I believe that the designer is Brazilian. And it's important for us to see ourselves in these spaces. And he was over the moon, happy and excited. It was probably for me the highlight of my day, just to be able to give him this experience. And so I'm grateful also to my friend for extending the invitation and allowing me to kind of share this experience with him. Because one of the things that I'm really passionate about is supporting our young people and their dreams, whatever they may be. Because I know for me, growing up in my family, it was always more important to get a good job and, secure the paycheck so that I wouldn't have to struggle financially. And the emphasis was always on that, rather than me pursuing my passion or my dream or what I loved. And, I get it and I understand why my parents pushed me in that direction. But I wish that they would have also nurtured my love of writing, the creative side of me that I've always had. They never stopped me from doing any of the things that I wanted to do, but they never pushed. And I think that being an adult in a young person's life and reminding them of how great they are at what they're passionate about helps them to not only believe in themselves more, but it also helps them to take chances and to take risks, because knowing that you have someone behind you supporting you and pushing you sometimes is that push that you need to move and to take action. And so, I do that for my nephew, for my nieces, and with my own kids. Like, I'm always going to support their dreams and the things that they love, because for me, though, of course, we need money to survive in this world and, and to live. I wholeheartedly believe that when you are doing what you love, when you're doing what you're passionate about, the money eventually finds you. When you set out on a path and you're constantly chasing money, not only are you going to be miserable, right? You're always going to find yourself chasing money, meaning that it's always going to be a struggle. You're always going to be chasing that next check, and it's not going to be flowing to you organically like it should be. And that's not a way that I want my children to live their lives. I want them to be happy and understand that money does not bring happiness, even though we need it to live and to survive, right? You'd be surprised at how happy one could be with the bare minimum when they're doing what they love. And that's how I want to raise my children. And those are the lessons that I want to instill on the young people in my life, because it's important. You have to follow your heart. You have to do what you love, because you only have one life, and we can't live our lives for other people or to live up to someone else's expectations of what our lives should be like. Because at the end of the day, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. You go to bed by yourself in your own body, and if you're not happy with who you are and what you're doing, then what's the point? Right? The point of life is to be happy in whatever way that shows up for you. And there are some people who are motivated by money, and money does make them happy. But you have to be careful with that, because then what happens when the money suddenly stops and there's none? And you've put all this weight of your happiness on this materialistic monetary thing, right? So your happiness is based on money, and then when you don't have it, what happens? You're unhappy and you're miserable, and so then what, life is no longer worth living? I don't know. It's just a weird dynamic, and so for me, it's never about money. I think that money it allows us to have certain luxuries, right? And it makes life a little bit easier. But there are plenty of people who have money who are living miserable lives. And for me, I'd rather be happy doing something that I love and living comfortably than chasing money and chasing a check and just feeling empty inside. So it was a pretty eventful week for me. I also had the opportunity to meet up for lunch with a friend who was visiting from Florida. And you guys know that I talk a lot about fostering relationships and really building on the connections that you make And so this young woman, I actually met her maybe a year or two ago at an event that I attended, and we so happened to be seated next to each other. And so, we talked and we chatted and we exchanged social media information. And so we've been connected ever since on Instagram. And so we've fostered the relationship online. And so when she reached out to me this week, telling me she was in New York, she's like, oh, I really want to see you. Let's get together. So we met up for lunch. And I would tell you that it was like we've known each other forever, even though there is an 11-year difference between the two of us. Like, I'm way older than she is. It was nice to sit with her and just, talk and catch up. And, one of the things that we were talking about, because she's also in media, she is a radio personality down in Florida, and she hosts 2 shows down there. She hosts a talk show, and then she's on Miami 92.1 at, where they play music. It's like just a regular radio show. But we were talking about, how when you're on your path towards chasing your dreams and going for those things that you're passionate about, how in that journey you end up losing friends. And this is something that I've talked extensively about, particularly because I've lost many friends throughout my life at various phases and stages of my life. And she was sharing with me the same thing, and so one of the things that I told her, and I guess I want to share with you guys, is that we never really lose friends, right? True friends are with you forever till the end. Now, what we do lose are, I don't know what to call them, right? But I guess maybe they're teachers, because they come into our lives for a reason, for a purpose, during a certain phase, right? During a certain time where we're going through something, and we need them to help us grow past that phase. Or we're showing up in their lives as the teachers, right? And they need us to help them get through. And then once we fulfill our purpose, or once they fulfill their purpose in our lives for that phase, you part ways, right? And you drift apart, because you're only meant to be in each other's lives for that small period of time. They're not meant to be with you for the entire journey. Those are not your friends, right? Because your friends are the ones who are going to last with you. And one of the perfect examples of friendship that I think I know is that between Oprah and Gayle. And you can see how that friendship has stood the test of time. How despite Oprah's success and the household name that she's become, Gayle and her friendship is rock solid, right? And there's nothing or no one that can come between that friendship, not even Oprah's success, because Gayle does not feel threatened by Oprah. Gayle is rooting for her friend. Gayle is not jealous of Oprah. Gayle doesn't want Oprah's life. Gayle is secure with who she is and with where her life is at. And so that's why they can be friends, because it's really based on genuine love and respect for one another. Because they were friends when Oprah was not Oprah, but when she wasn't the Oprah that we all know her to be, right? They were friends when Oprah was starting out and beginning. And so they've seen each other through probably the most difficult times in their lives, and also their biggest successes up to this point, and they're still friends. And so I think that we have to redefine that word friends and realize that not everyone who is in our lives, not everyone who plays important roles for certain periods in our lives are our friends. They're teachers and they're there for a reason. And once they have fulfilled that purpose, they move forward. And so I've learned to recognize that, and I've learned to accept those relationships that have dissolved for what they were. And I will be honest with you, there were some that ended that were painful, but I've come to terms with what their purpose was. And the thing is, when you're growing and you have, a certain vision for your life, the reality is that everyone is not going to grow in that same direction with you. Some are not even going to grow at all. Some will remain exactly where they are for the rest of their lives. And so when that happens, it's almost impossible to continue that relationship because they will always resent you for wanting more, for doing more, for growing, for expanding, for really fulfilling your purpose. Because people who don't know what their purpose is will never understand your desire to fulfill yours. And so we talked about that, and it was interesting to see how many, because this is something that I hear many women talk about, especially women who do similar work as me, women who are really stepping into their calling and fulfilling, their purpose. They all say that they've lost their closest friends or people who they thought were close friends. And you don't lose anyone who's meant to be in your life. So I want you to understand that. If you've lost them, that means that they have served their purpose in your life, or you have served your purpose in theirs. Something that we also talked about during our lunch was how hard we tend to be on ourselves. And that's really the theme and the topic for this week's podcast, right? Stop being so hard on yourself. And I think that we are just culturally taught to believe that we are never enough, that for some reason we have to fulfill these, I don't even want to, if I want to call them unrealistic expectations, but that we somehow have to fulfill others' expectations of what our lives are supposed to be. One of the things that we talked a lot about was family and the role that plays in who we are, who we become, and how to break free from the expectations set by our families for our lives, and how that results in guilt, and how we, live with the guilt, or how we struggle with letting go of that guilt because we don't want to disappoint our families. But then in doing that, we then make ourselves unhappy, and we live these lives where we're pretending, right, to live a life that we just don't really want. And I know that for myself, I was a big people pleaser, and I never wanted to go against my family. I always had a hard time saying no, and so I would just do things even if I didn't want to do them, because for me, it was more uncomfortable to say no to them than me having to just deal with it. But I will tell you guys that there comes a time where you can't do that anymore because you feel like you're suffocating. Literally, it feels like you're suffocating. It feels like you can't breathe. And you start to not recognize yourself. And when that point came for me, one, what it did was it caused a lot of problems in my marriage, because there was times that my family would expect certain things from me that maybe I didn't want to do, but I felt obligated to do. And a lot of times my husband didn't agree with it. And so it would cause conflict in my household with my husband. And I just didn't know how to say no to my family. Because again, I was trying to live up to these certain expectations that they had set for me. But it was affecting my life personally and my relationship. And that at that point was when I said, I can't keep doing this anymore. And I can't keep living my life for other people, because I was unhappy. Not only was I not pleasing my husband, but even when I was doing things for my family, they weren't 100% pleased. And I wasn't happy. So no one was happy in this scenario. In that equation, no one was happy. And so I had to take a step back and really rethink and reevaluate what I was doing. And I decided, you know what, no matter what I do, it will never be enough for other people. So I have to take control of my life and do the things that are going to make me happy. Because in the end, even if no one else is happy with what I'm doing, at least I'm doing what makes me happy. And I know that particularly for Latinos, we come from really strong, close-knit families. Family is everything to us, everything. And so breaking those cultural and family cycles is hard and it's uncomfortable. But the truth is, we can't live for our families, because at the end of the day, we have to be with ourselves, and we have to be able to live a life and create a life that we are proud of. And so I think that a lot of times those feelings of guilt and us feeling that we don't measure up and like we're not enough and, we're so hard on ourselves is because we are trying to live up to someone else's expectations. Because I will tell you that when you are doing what you want to do, and when you are living life your way, life doesn't feel so hard. It doesn't. And we also, especially for women, ladies, we have to let go of this idea that our lives are supposed to look a certain way by a certain age. And if our life does not look like what we've pictured it at that age, that we somehow have failed. We have to let go of that idea, because we have evolved way past our parents and our grandparents, and no longer is success defined by being married and having children, by the time you're 25. Where that may have been true, for our parents and grandparents, those are not the expectations now. And even if you feel that whatever age you are now, you're supposed to be at a certain point in your career and you're not there, you have to let that go. Because everything happens in its time. You have to trust God's plan for your life and know that everything that you are going through is preparing you for that moment when you're going to blow up, when the opportunity is going to present itself, where you're going to finally be in that place that you envision yourself. But you have to let go of the timetable that you have placed on yourself and trust God's timing. because no one's life ever works out the way that they plan it. And the reason for that is because there are lessons that have to be learned. There are experiences that you have to go through and grow through. And you can't set a specific age for when that's going to happen for you. And so if you are not at this point where you envision yourself to be, then understand that there is still more work for you to do. There's still more work that needs to be done before you get to where you're supposed to get. And just trust. Trust that when you're doing the work, you will eventually get there. The average American lives until they're 90 years old. 90, right? I'm 40. So technically, I'm right in the prime of my life. And when you think about age, the first 20 years of your life, you're not doing anything because you're being born and you're growing and you're finishing, school, high school, all those things. First 20 years of your life, you're not doing anything yet. You get into your 20s, now you're starting to experience your first taste of freedom and what that looks like. And in your 20s, you still don't know shit, really. You're still learning yourself, right? So you're not even working on really a career at that point. You're preparing yourself in your 20s. You hit your 30s, that's when things start to come together, right? Now you have a little bit of experience, you have a little bit of wisdom maybe, but really now for me in my 40s, this is when I'm really confident. I know who I am. I know what I want. I know what I don't want. I'm not afraid to ask and demand for what I deserve. And I'm actively out here working for my dream and working for what I want. And if I allowed myself to entertain the idea that I'm 40 years old and I'm just quote unquote starting out in media and in radio and in the talk show that I hope to have one day, that I will have one day, if I tell myself that I should have had all that by now, that it's never going to happen for me because I'm 40 and because my life is over, my life is just beginning. Okay? It is just beginning for me. And at this age, I have so much to share with the world. And I have so much experience and so much wisdom, so much that I couldn't have shared or known in my 20s or even in my 30s. So yes, this is my journey. This is my path. And I trust God's timing for my life and for how things are supposed to unfold for me. And that's what I want for you. So I'm going to leave you with this message. I'm going to end this podcast. And I'm going to tell you, stop being so hard on yourself. You are exactly where you need to be in your life right now. Give yourself permission to embrace this moment. Learn the lessons that need to be learned and do the work. Do the work, and I promise you, everything that you have ever wanted in your life will manifest. Do the work and be patient. And so with that, my loves, I am going to end the show. I wish you nothing but amazingness for the upcoming week. Stay focused. And as I tell you every week, crush some goals.